Relationships. They are critical to our success and satisfaction in any part of our life. Few will disagree with this fact, yet we don't always know what to do or practice what we know. Today, we're talking about investing in our relationships as a way to grow our business, our careers, our teams, and our lives. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you could be live for future episodes on your favorite social media platform. You can get all of those future live episode dates and info about those and lots more by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn pages. Easiest way to do that is just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn and get all of the details. Today's episode is brought to you by my upcoming book, the second edition of The Long Distance Leader, Revised Rules for Remarkable Remote and Hybrid Leadership. If you lead a team that is distributed in any way, this book will give you new skills, insights, and the confidence to lead more effectively in this new world of work. Learn more and pre-order your copy or order your copy, depending on when you're listening, today at remarkablepodcast.com/LDL. And with that, I'm going to bring in my guest. Here he is, his smiling face is right there. His name is Mo Bunnell. He is, let me tell you about Mo. He helps complex organizations grow by scaling business development skills across their organizations and creating a growth-oriented culture. He is the author of The Snowball System, the host of the video podcast, Real Relationships, Real Revenue, and the founder of the Bunnell Idea Group, BIG, B-I-G, who has trained tens of thousands of seller experts at over 400 clients all over the world. His newest book is titled Give to Grow, and that will be the focus of our conversation today. BIG's clients have used Mo and his team's Grow Big training to give their experts a system for growth that creates raving fans, gives comprehensive business development framework, and is, dare he say, says fun to use. He started his career as an expert himself, passing all of the actuarial exams to earn their highest designation, a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. I believe the first on the show to have such a designation. Today, he gets the most excited working with BIG's clients that usually fall into two groups: professional service firms and service-based companies. He lives in Atlanta with his wife of nearly 30 years, their two daughters when they're not in college, which I'm guessing right now they are in college, and their miniature donkey, Louis Hamilton. We could probably do the entire show on the miniature donkey storyline, but we're not. Welcome, Mo. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about leadership today and how to use relationships to broaden your reach and be able to make positive change in the world.
Yeah, I'm guessing that some people who are listening, especially if you've been with us for a while, you're listening to that open and you're saying, well, that sounds like, that doesn't mean it's not necessarily 100% sound like leadership, Kevin. Sounds like this is a sales book, which, Mo, I don't think you've ever used the word sales in the book that I noticed. I'm pretty confident that's on purpose. But let's just talk about the journey. You go from being an actuary, a distinguished actuary, to doing the work you do today. Tell us a little bit about that at that very high level. Like, how do you end up here?
Yeah, got it. Well, Kevin, I think a lot of people use the phrase, it's not what you know, but who you know. And I just completely disagree. It's what you know and who you know, and how deep is your ability to add value in both domains, your expertise and your relationships. And I had taken all those exams to become a fellow Society of Actuaries, 24 back in the day in the 80s and 90s. Pass rate is a third. So 2/3 of the people are failing. And
On each one of the 24.
Yeah. Oh, it was horrendous. It was so hard. They made it easier since then. These young actuaries, it's a walk in the park.
Whoa,
But back in the
no, that
day,
just sounds like you and I are old. That's all that sounds like.
That's right. Well, wait a second. I feel like I am in a good way. But yeah, once I passed those exams, the consulting firm I was out, they actually transitioned me to a relationship management role where I led some of our biggest client relationships. And I went to my boss when I made that transition. I literally moved from a deep technical practice area, healthcare consulting, and that was an inch wide and a mile deep in that, doing actuarial work largely, I moved to this role where I was an inch deep and a mile wide, having to interface with people 30 years older than me, and I had to learn relationships. Since all I knew was how to study,
Well, and
I
his
studied.
advice to you was pretty brief, as I recall.
That's right.
Because you
Sorry, I
were
had
looking
to
for a playbook, right? You were looking for like, okay, how do I figure this out? And you got like 6 words, if I remember right.
That's exactly right. I was in that office my first day. I'd literally moved floors, offices, gotten rid of all my projects, and went in early that day. I was ready to go. We had orchestrated the move for about a year, but I clearly hadn't done my due diligence, Kevin. I asked my boss for the manual on relationship development. I was used to studying. I was used to people giving me a big, tome of information. I would memorize it, hopefully pass the exam. And yeah, he laughed a little bit and he said, "There's no manual. Treat the client right." That was the that was my training.
Okay, I said 6 words. It was only 4. I remember. I knew it was about the client and being right, but I couldn't remember exactly. So,
Maybe
uh,
put young man at the end of it or
oh,
something. It
okay. So
got to
there you go.
6.
So we get 6. So, so obviously you went into a relationship role in that organization. So, and I opened with sort of a profoundly true statement that the better our relationships, the better our lives is fundamentally what I said.
Yep.
But why is that where you've gone with your work in terms of this book? Like, let's just talk about from your perspective, why relationships, whether it's as a
Yeah.
sales professional or whether it's as a leader or whatever, like why is it so very important?
Yeah, and I just want to put a pin in something you just said. Like, while our book is mostly written from somebody who develops a book of business, and that's the language you use because that's most of our clients, these same skills are true for any leader. And I think that's why I'm excited about widening the aperture with you today.
Well,
The
and in
reason I
fact,
wrote,
if I didn't see that, you wouldn't be here. I mean, just to be
yeah,
honest, like
exactly.
when I looked at the book and we had a conversation that I know your publisher, and so that made me look a little quicker, a little closer. But
Yep.
ultimately, I had to see that I have to see how this book can work with this audience and be really, really
Yep.
valuable to them, which it is, and help people get past that sort of building a book of business kind of thing.
You got it.
So go ahead.
More broadly, it's about making a proactive, positive change on the world. So what's interesting to me, and we've gotten to work with, I don't know, 600 or 800 organizations, trained over 50,000 people easily. And what we find is that almost in almost every single organization, there are lots of different mechanisms to teach expertise. The what you know part, the doing the work part, if you will. Once the yes is already made, once the approval's already there, once the project is greenlit. Well, just doing the work itself gets you better at doing the work. Mentorships, working with your boss, cross-functional teams, certifications, trainings, all that kind of stuff. But there's hardly any advice out there on how to deepen relationships in a way and orchestrate a decision-making process where everybody wins at every turn so that you actually can get the yes. So if somebody's whether they're a partner in a law firm or they're a CIO inside of a large organization, they're doing the same thing. They've got one foot in a deep expertise and they've got lots of mechanisms to get better at that. But they've also got one foot in relationship development in a way that they're going to be able to get the yes for the next thing that they want to impact. So they want to go from being an order taker to a driver of positive change in either scenario. Everybody that's a leader is in that business. And why
Absolutely.
we wrote Give to Grow is to teach those relationship skills so that you can make the change that you want.
In the book, you talk about that as doing the work versus winning the work, and obviously
Yeah.
you've widened it out a little bit because this isn't just about winning the next deal or whatever. But when you look at this, there's a couple pages, everybody in the book that look kind of like this.
Yeah. I was
He's
ready with
got
the
it too.
same
Okay,
exact
cool.
pages.
You
Right.
got I've got the advanced readers, I think. So you got a hardcover. It
Yeah.
looks like I do not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yet, anyway. But anyway,
I know
I
people,
was
Kevin. I think I can get you one.
only if it's signed. So, like, here's the thing. I was struck by that. I mean, the way you just
Yeah.
talked about it, I thought was really helpful. Is that if you were to read these things, these pairs of things, right? When we're doing the work, communication is predictable and comfortable. When we're winning the work, we would now say leading the work,
Yeah.
communication is fluid and uncomfortable. Like you could read almost every one of those and say you could replace winning the work with leading the work, and they'd all match. And so I love that as an idea. the biggest idea of the book, it's in the title, Give to Grow. And some people might be familiar with the idea or the work of reciprocity. And so how does this connect? Does it, in what way? How would you, for people that know that framework, right, from Mr. Cialdini, probably most of us,
Yep.
what would be the connection between the premise of Give to Grow and the idea of the principle of reciprocity?
Yeah, I have a real strong opinion on this. So here's a strong take, Kevin. There's lots of things that are influential. Cialdini found 6 that are the most influential in everybody. Social proof, we want to do what other people do. Scarcity, we want more of what there's less of. Authority, we trust people, especially that are authority figures, especially in times of stress and other things. But it's difficult when you're trying to drive proactive change to lead with anything except reciprocity. So if I start with authority, I'm the expert, believe me, we need to do X. Well, immediately a decision maker is like, whoa, I don't like you're pushing that on me. I don't know. It creates a fight or flight mechanism. Scarcity, hey, there's only one left. Do you want it? Well, maybe, but what is it? What are we talking about?
And is
So
there
the
really
other,
one? That's the
yeah,
part.
and is it? Yeah. Are you telling the truth? Yeah. So these other things are tough to lead with. I believe reciprocity or giving first is the master key to every lever of influence because we can always start with a gift. We can always start with a half-hour workshop talking about how we might start the new IT strategy with the rest of the leadership team. We can always start with a project plan to tell people how something can be done. We can always start with an introduction to another expert that knows about this topic and can educate the team on how we might want to use generative AI to take the business to the next level, whatever it is. Generosity is always a great starting point. It's hardly ever not a great starting point. And then once you've actually given a gift of your expertise and time, the reason I call it a master key is because now you've got an authentic way to do all those other things of influence.
Yeah.
You've bought time effectively to stumble into commonalities, which we found is the number one correlation to likability, one of the key factors of influence. We can
Relatedness,
naturally
finding that
talked about
connection.
how we've go ahead. Yeah.
I said relatedness, finding that connection for sure.
Relatedness, yeah, like because now we're on the same team as once we're doing something together, and we're going to find those things to relate to. Exactly. Um, Authority, we can naturally just talk about how we've done this kind of thing before in a way that's normal and not weird and cheesy and pushy. So anyway, we could go through all the other 5 drivers, but reciprocity is the one that always works to start with, and the best part about it is it feels great.
It does for everybody, really, because we all like to receive a gift. We're going to talk about some gifts in a little bit here, uh, but you spend some time in the book, which I really appreciate as a writer and as a student of the learning process, with some lies we tell ourselves, with some things that we've all said to ourselves. Some of us maybe hear more of some of them than others. And we don't have time to unpack them all, Mo, but I would really
Right.
be curious for you to let's just pick on a couple and maybe we can talk about them.
Yeah.
Like we tell these lies to ourselves. And then maybe let's take it from the perspective of, okay, if I'm the leader and I know that that's the lie my team members telling, how can I help them? How
Mm.
can I coach them through that a little bit? So I'll let you
Oh,
pick. There are 5, and then we'll talk together a little about the leadership side of that. But just like all of us are in this boat together, whether it's about relationships or anything else, right? And these lies apply to more than just building relationships. So pick a couple and let's just talk about it for a minute.
yeah, let's do it. And for context, my publisher, Todd, he does 1 book a year. So we've spent a massive amount of time together to bring this book to market, Give to Grow. And at one point about a year ago, Kevin, he asked me, he's like, hey, Mo, you've told me about all these great success stories your clients have, people that have driven all this positive change, build a big book of business, open up a new market, whatever it is. And he said, well, what gets in people's way? And I'm like, Kevin, it like jarred me. I looked at him and I said, I'm actually not 100% sure. I can guess. So we went back and in dozens and dozens of workshops, we asked people, think of a time when you wanted to reach out to somebody, but you didn't. Everybody's got it in their head. Then we said, okay, tell us exactly what you were thinking. And we cataloged hundreds and hundreds of verbatims until there weren't any more. We didn't know if there'd be 3 roadblocks, 27. Turns out there's 5. And there's 5 things that everybody puts walls up in their own way. Limiting beliefs, if you want to say that,
Yep.
lies we tell ourselves is what we called it. And we don't even know these are lies until you read it in the book. And so there's 5, like you said. the two I'll let you choose because I think you know your audience super well, but two um, that are typically later in somebody's career after they've blasted through the first three lies because they sort of they do go in order. The two that I think we might dig into, one is I'm too busy. That's a big one. And the other one's I'm going to look bad, or what's underneath I'm going to look bad is fear of rejection. What do you think would be best?
Well, first of all, it's like we know each other because I say that busy is the most dangerous four-letter word in the English language, even
Yep.
though my grandmother would not, Mo, have agreed with that. I promise you, she would have had other four-letter words higher than the word busy. Uh, but I can tell you, I believe it is the most dangerous one.
Yeah.
Um, because we all have exactly the same amount of time. And the other thing with the word busy is it becomes self-explanatory, and it allows, if I say to you, well, Mo, I've been really busy, and you're going to say, oh man, me too. And so we get a boost from the other person
Yeah.
when we
Circles
say it,
around.
and it's
Yeah.
not serving us or anybody
No.
really. So
No.
let's just talk about that one because
Let's
I think it is a lie.
It's a total lie. So here's what the best do. You saw in the book how we talk about top performers and how they rise above these lies and orchestrate wonderful buy-in processes and things. The I'm too busy trap will hit anybody, and it comes and goes and ebbs and flows. So we've got to be ready for it anytime. So the trick around this is not thinking of, it's not a trick, but the solve is not thinking of driving change or doing the work, winning the work, not just doing, delivering on the project or getting the next yes. If people think of that like an old school scale or a teeter totter, where if I'm doing work, I cannot drive the next project or the yes to the leadership team to the next project. If we think of it as either or, we are sunk before we start.
Yes.
So we actually want to think of doing the work we've gotten the yes on and getting the next yes. We need to think of those as integrated. So a real simple way to think about this is some research you saw in the book that came out of Cornell University a couple years ago, and it found a face-to-face ask is 34 times more likely to get a yes than an email ask. Not 34%, 34 times. It was the difference between 2 out of 100 chance of a yes and 68.
Yep.
So little 30-second asks while we're busy doing the work are really powerful. So let's say we're the CIO, we're giving an update on the huge transformation we're doing in IT to the CEO, and we're giving them an update. Well, we should weave it, that's doing the work, if you will, air quotes. We should weave in and ask for the next step. Hey, as we're winding this down, this transformation is going to be done in about 3 months. Thanks for saying this is the smoothest IT transformation we've ever had, CEO. I got to tell you, I've got some ideas about what we might want to tackle over the next 3 years. I built a draft strategy. Could we just sit down for 30 minutes in your office sometime over the next couple of weeks and start thinking towards next year and the year after that? I think it'd be really helpful to get your input. Well, that takes like 30 seconds to get out. You're going to get a yes.
You're
You're
going to get it.
integrated.
You bet.
Yeah. Now you're sitting down with them talking about next year's yeses you want to get. And but what most people do is they feel like, well, I'm not allowed to ask for the next thing until I'm done with the current thing. Well, if you wait 3 months, now you've got to email the CEO. How long is it going to take to get the meeting? That's the either or mindset.
And
And
it's
we
not
want to
even
think
just
of it
that. It's just the
integrated.
momentum that comes. Because we're having a conversation. We're just having a conversation.
Exactly.
And it's the natural
Exactly.
next thing. And it's much more likely for them to say yes. It's much less likely for them to get stuck in the busy trap because we're in this conversation. But if I get a blind email from you as the CEO later, then I have to think about the email. I'm going to decide. And I look at the calendar. But if it's just in a conversation, it's just going to be, yeah, let's get it on the calendar.
Yeah. Stop by my EA on the way out. Yeah, let's set it up. That's really important to me. Done. Momentum. I'm telling you, one of the biggest things in the book, Kevin, I think you saw this, is like figuring out ways to keep momentum going around positive change. And that's just like a little tip that can work.
I think that is that the whole idea of momentum is so important. If you're thinking about, so like if you are a sales professional, like you can think about that, like I need to be doing that. But I love, Mo, the example you just gave is a person who is a sales professional, but they don't have that moniker, right? They're in the IT organization, they're a project manager or whatever, and we're all still in that same mode, and we know that if one thing starts to end and the next one comes and we're waiting for one to end, then we have these big lulls, and that doesn't serve us, doesn't serve anybody.
Right.
I want us to get into the 4 gifts, which
Yeah.
to me is a super cool part of the book. And You frame it about what we have to do, like, again, any relationship, what we have to do and what the other person receives. So since
Yes.
the book is Give to Get, I want to talk about what frame them as the gifts. And so I'll just put one on the screen and say it for those who are watching or listening later, and then just talk about that one a little bit. So these are 4 gifts that we can give to someone else in our life, in any part of our life. And I'll let you take a minute or so on each one as we go. Okay. First one is the
Yeah.
gift, and I did them in the order they're in the book. So
Yeah.
the gift of attention.
You got it. And just for context, the way these fit in is once we remove the lies and we get ourselves out of the way, now we can provide gifts to people to orchestrate a wonderful buy-in process. We're hanging this off the idea that everybody hates to be sold to, but they love to buy. So we could say everybody hates to be sold to, but we love to buy in if we're internal in a big organization.
Absolutely.
The first gift we can give somebody is the gift of attention. The what we hang off of that gift we're giving them is what we can focus on is focus on engagement. In so many different meetings, people are focused on themselves, not the engagement of others. We're not giving them the gift of attention. Here's the 25-page PowerPoint I've orchestrated logically, perfectly with the date and everything to try to drive to a yes. But that's me shouting at people. That's what it feels like. We want to flip that script and we want to give people the gift of attention. If there's anything that's meaningful to people, it's to be seen, it's to be heard. So instead of coming in with that 25-page PowerPoint, maybe we can frame up the meeting as a discussion. Maybe we can ask some questions. Maybe we can provide one page that has the most important piece of data that we want to center the conversation around, and we pass that out. And as we focus on, if we could have a camera on the edge of the room watching a conversation happen, we want to see leaning in. We want to see people not on their phones. We want them asking questions. We want them talking as much as we talk. And if we can orchestrate that by focusing on engagement, giving the gift of attention, that's when we're starting to move forward about hearing their priorities and their words. And then we can hang the things that we'd like to do underneath that.
Using their words, because that, which leads us to them feeling like they've received the gift of understanding.
You're really good. You've done this before, like maybe 450
This is
times or
not my
something.
first day.
Yeah. Yeah, the gift of understanding. The idea here is we call this fall in love with their problem. So as they're talking, we're driving engagement, not a filibuster from us, but we're actually driving a real conversation. Our second gift is the gift of understanding. How can we ask amazing questions to solicit the ideas that they've got in their head? Again, 2 P's here, their priorities and their words. And if we can do that, now we're going to be able to start to use that information to make some recommendations, and we'll get to a moment and take some next steps. The most important idea I can give here that's really, really practical, people have said they really love the practical tips in the book, is when you're asking questions, talking to the audience, then you want to do so in a way that Dr. Diana Tamir found super beneficial, which is when you ask a question that makes it clear to the other person, you want something only they know, their personal perspective. That's when the pleasure center of the human mind lights up. Same area of the brain that lights up when we're drinking Red Bull or having a great dessert. The pleasure center rules the roost, especially for short-term time periods. So if we can ask a question like, Kevin, you've interviewed 450 people on the show. I'm your 451st. If you've noticed, just from your perspective, one important trend that's emerging in leadership, what would you say it is?
Well, so this is not the way this is supposed to go. No, I'm just teasing. I think that one of the things that's continuing to change. I don't really think it's more important than it ever was. I just think that we are figuring out how important it is, and that is that leadership isn't about us; it's about other people,
Oh, yeah.
and that things that we didn't talk about 25 years ago in leadership conversations. We couldn't set on a podcast because they didn't exist, but we didn't talk about being genuine. We didn't talk about being transparent. We didn't talk about
Mm.
some of those things, which are things that we are doing, but we're doing them in the context of what the other, it's relationship building ultimately with those that we're leading.
Wow. So you're seeing more authenticity, transparency, vulnerability in the appropriate way. as time has gone on, people are looking for more meaning than just getting things done,
Yeah,
maybe?
100%. And well, here's how I would say it. I would say the leaders that are getting the best results are moving that direction. And I think that our
Ooh, that's good.
world and our workforce, um, see, here's why I don't think it's really different, because I think if you had a leader if we had a leader, and we're ish the same age, I'm guessing, that if we had a leader early in our career, if they were those things,
Mhm.
we wanted that. It's just that then people didn't think that was really possible. It was like an outlier. And now it's more and more
Yeah.
expected. So if we can really do it, the leaders that are really doing those things are really at a, if you want to call it this, a competitive advantage.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's really good. And then that what how you just described that gives people the things to focus on so that they can get that competitive advantage and get the results they want.
Absolutely.
So, brilliant. Well, just to put a bow on all that, that was an example of a question that you could ask somebody that could get their personal perspective. Kevin, how did that feel answering that question?
Well, obviously I teased you by saying that I'm supposed to be the one asking the questions here, but of course that feels good, right?
Yeah.
Because it we all of us love to share what we know and share
Yep.
what we believe, and so often, and maybe even a little more so in a remote workplace, people aren't getting that chance to do it. And if we take it back to the building your business part of this conversation, a lot of times the person that you're wanting to help isn't getting the chance to say those things either. And the minute
Mm,
that you move into that mode with them, you start to build a relationship with them that they may not really be finding anywhere else. This idea of being the trusted advisor
yep.
starts to really begin to happen. And it starts with attention, understanding, which leads to the third gift.
Yeah. Wisdom. I love this one. Um, so the thing we say that we can focus on to give the gift of wisdom is to give them the experience of working with you. So let's say that we've asked great we had engagement and great conversation right there as we were in that last one. And so let's say that you've had somebody's had a great 45-minute with a leadership team on a particular aspect. We've learned their priorities and their words. We can suggest some type of next step. By far the best thing we can give at this point is wisdom. We're an expert. We know what's needed. We've seen this movie before. We're a couple clicks down the path than everybody else is. By far, the best move at that exact point is, would it be helpful if I did blank? And that's what that does is it talks about a give to get, different than our title of the book, Give to Grow. A give to get, as opposed to where give to grow is like a mindset or a mantra, a give to get is a specific offer of help. It's almost like a very small project done at no charge, but it gets things started. Back to the idea of momentum. If we're trying to drive positive change at the very beginning, there is no momentum. So we've got to start with reciprocity. We have to have that master key we talked about before and say, would it be helpful if I did blank? Maybe I'm going to do an analysis and come back to the senior leadership team and say what it means. Maybe I'm going to bring in an expert. Maybe we do a half day brainstorming on a topic. Maybe we build out a project plan. There's a lot of give to gets we can put at the end of the sentence. Would it be helpful if I, or would it be helpful if we blank?
Right.
But we want to have some type of roll up your sleeves. We're now co creating something together. That's what takes something from no momentum to tons of momentum that's going to let us capitalize on that.
I love that. Which really points to the last of the four gifts. So we've
Yep.
had the gift of attention, the gift of understanding, the gift of wisdom, and we can't really get to this one without the first two. And
Yep.
then you've now really hinted at the fourth one, the gifts of clarity and progress.
Yep. So let's say let's pull this thread through around somebody that's a CIO and they're really trying to drive change in an organization by getting the organization to budget and get excited about a pretty large technology upgrade. Maybe we're integrating systems or something like that. So at this point, let's say that we got some momentum. We did a half day workshop on getting the needs of the business and aligning that with IT, and we did a big analysis. At the end of that little workshop with the senior leadership team, we've got to give a recommendation. So many people fail to do this because they feel like it's air quotes salesy or pushy or something like that. But we're not giving the gift of clarity and progress. People are busy. They got 7 other meetings to run to this day. They got 103 emails. We want to just end every meeting with a recommendation. well, gosh, based on what we talked about, I'd suggest we do blank. Give that recommendation, and that what we're going to do is going to steer the momentum we've gotten to the place that we want everybody to get to.
Which will be a win for everybody, as you just described it.
Yep.
And that's how we get out of, well, that's going to seem salesy, right? Because we're creating a win for everyone, and that's ultimately
Yes.
what we're after here, right? So you say something in the book multiple times, and it's a it's a profound truth in the places that you use in the book, but just in general in life. And here it is. I'll let you take the conversation and hear however you want. But the phrase that you wrote multiple times is, "It's always your move,"
Yeah.
or it's always our move, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So
Would almost
what do you
go ahead.
mean? Say a little bit more about that.
Well, psychologically, there's a great study by Roy Baumeister that found that bad is stronger than good. We are hard bad events, that bad feedback you got 10 years ago, you still remember, but you don't remember the 9 amazing pieces of feedback you got since then every year. Bad hits us harder, we remember it more deeply, things like that. So our brain is wired to avoid bad things. So if we made a suggestion to somebody on email and they didn't reply back, we can like, oh gosh, should I send another thing to them or not? It's easy to not always take the initiative and have agency. So the phrase in the book, it's always your move. And then when we put it many times right behind that, and it's always a time to be helpful. It's always a chance to be helpful. If we think of that way, if it's always our move and it's always a chance to be helpful, we don't blow in the winds of whatever email we got or whatever the stock market does that day or whatever budgets look like tomorrow or the fact that Sue canceled on us a meeting for a week from Tuesday we really wanted. You just always get back up and you always make a move and you always respond with generosity. And it's the people that do that that just accomplish more.
And I know you can cite 100 examples. I know I can. I know my team can as well. You've sent the message, you've left the voicemail, and it seems like, okay, there's nothing more. We're just gonna, and then you send one more, and they say, "I'm so glad you reached out. This is exactly, you've been on my mind. I've been thinking
Yep.
about this. Can you do that?" Like there's something about that continual focus on the other person that is nearly irresistible. And again, for mutual benefit, right? At the end of the
You
day.
nailed it. You nailed it. There was somebody in our class one time, quick story here, Kevin, he was looking up at the ceiling and we were talking about this exact concept. And I was like, what are you thinking right now? Like he had this big imaginary thought bubble over his shoulder.
Yeah.
And he said, I've been thinking of outreach like I'm playing tennis. Like I love playing tennis. I play it all the time. He's a really good tennis player. And he said, I've been thinking of it like I can only send something back to them after they hit it back to me. And he's like, now when I think it's always my move and always a chance to be helpful, he said, I need to be thinking of it like I'm practicing my serve. I'm just going to keep serving up value to them. And over time, I'm going to deepen that relationship. And he went on to he was already successful, but he took his career to a totally next level when he thought that way.
Yeah, I love that. And I forgot that's the story. You noticed me starting to nod as soon as you started to tell it. So is there, but we've talked about a lot. There's a lot more that I know that we could talk about. There's a lot more in this book. And
Yep.
we've been talking with Mo Bunnell, the author of the great new book, Give to Grow. Is there any other, is there like one thing I didn't ask or one thing you'd really like to talk about before we start to wrap up?
Yeah. Let me give you one more thought. One of the things that people ask me a lot is how do I keep climbing up? How do I keep rising up to another sort of rung of impact if I can? And the metaphor we use here is a ladder. Time is the ladder. We've all got the same amount of time, like you mentioned before. There's no excuse of I'm too busy anymore. What the best do is they're always thinking, how can I elevate my impact? There's a ton of research I'll skip over for time reasons, but that show that we are wired to add things to our life, not to subtract. So we need a trigger to subtract. We need a reason. We need a reminder. How many meetings have leaders on the podcast had or the show had in the last year that said, hey, what things are we not going to do? Like you probably had 1,000 meetings on the new initiative or the campaign, but you never have a meeting on what you're not going to do. So you actually need to have that. So super practical things that one thing people can do to rise to another level is put a half hour on your calendar once a quarter. We found that's the perfect time period. And in that little half-hour meeting, you just take a look at you look at your calendar over the last quarter's weeks. So you look back over 12, 13 weeks, and you say, well, how can I go find 50 hours? Where are there 50 hours of things I said yes to that made sense years ago or a quarter before or whatever? They made sense to do last quarter, but they don't make sense to do in the future. Meetings I'm redundant on that my team could handle, initiatives I did that just didn't turn out, a conference I went to that, I don't know why I go to that every year now that I think about it. But if we go and find 50 hours once a quarter, that's about 10% of our time. And then we're able to reallocate that to higher value activities. Back to the metaphor to close it out, the only way we can climb up to the next rung of impact is if we take our foot off the bottom rung that's holding us back, and we find 50 hours, find 10% of your time, quarter after quarter after quarter. You know how compound interest works, 10% 4 times a year really compounds quickly.
Really,
And
yeah.
those folks are the ones that are really rising up to impact the world in a great way, are the ones that are finding a way to subtract things so they can trust themselves and have a higher level impact on new things.
So I have just a couple more questions, Mo, before we finish. And I always love to ask people this because I'm curious. And if I'm curious, chances are so are everyone who's listening. So, like, what do you do, Mo, for fun?
Oh man, I love working out. I love playing ultimate frisbee. Uh, there's old people leagues now for ultimate frisbee, so I fly around the world and play in global tournaments and played in worlds a couple times. That's fun. And then when I play locally, of course, I'm playing against 20-year-olds, so I try not to pull my calf. But I just love it. I love chasing that frisbee like I'm a dog.
There you go.
So fun.
So first time I've had the Society of Registered, whatever the right words are
Society
here,
of Actuaries Ultimate Frisbee
Actuary, and
combo.
the Ultimate Frisbee. You got them both, and you got the miniature donkey. When I first read it, I thought it said miniature monkey. I had to read it again. I'm like, oh, miniature donkey. Okay, so
That'd be very unique.
seriously, and I'm glad I read it a second time because otherwise I might have like said the wrong, and that would have been a little bit embarrassing. So what are you
cracked
reading
me
these
up.
days, Mo? I'm going to leave the donkey alone. I'm going to leave Louis alone. Tell me what you're reading these days.
Well, I'm rereading something. My nephew, I have a nephew I'm very close with. He's just an amazing young man, and he's making his shift actually from very deep technical expertise to also sort of the relationship skills. He's really good at it, and we work out a lot. He's about to have his first son in about a month with he and his wife. So I rebought a book called Secrets of Happy Families. It's fantastic. It's an evidence-based, science-based approach on what happy families do. And I'd read it long ago when my girls were younger. Well, now they're quite a bit older now, but I'm actually in the process of rereading it because I'm giving it to my nephew Spencer, which is really fun, but it's so darn good. I'm reading it again. Fantastic read.
The Secrets of Happy Families, that along with Mo's book, Give to Get, and we'll both be in, we'll probably put Cialdini in there as well. Things that we've talked about here will be in the show notes. You can go get links to all those. But where do you want to point us, Mo? I know you've got some cool stuff people can get along with the book.
Yeah.
Where do you want to point people? What do you want to tell them before we start to close up?
Well, Kevin, you can imagine the pressure an author and our whole team feels around giving things away when you write a book called Give to Grow.
You probably ought to have something.
We probably ought to have something good, and we do. So we developed a whole training course, like dozens of downloads with screensavers, reminders. We've got a list of 50 plus best go-to questions we've ever found that work like you and I talked about. We've got a team launch guide. And then many videos from me that actually teach all the relevant content in Give to Grow. It's 100% free. And we've even designed it so that it's better if you have the book Give to Grow, but it actually works even if you don't. People can get it right away. They can buy Give to Grow, the book right away, and they can get the free course at givetogrow.info. Givetogrow.info.
Givetogrow.info. If you're watching, it's on the screen. If not, it's easy to remember. Givetogrow.info, and go to wherever you find books and get your copy of Give to Grow. Invest in relationships to build your business and your career. And hopefully one of my goals today was that you would see as a listener that there was value here, even if you saw this book in the bookstore, you might think, oh, that's not for me. But I hope you now see, hey, yes, this is for me, as a leader, as a human, as a parent, as a sales professional. building your book of business, building your career, building your business. So now I've got a question for all of you that are here. It's the question I ask you all every single week. And it is simply this: what are you going to do now? Now what is the question? What are you going to do with what you just got? What action will you take? You wrote some things down, I'm confident, or even if you're on your treadmill or riding a bike or whatever, you made some mental notes, and that's useful. But more useful is, what action will you take as a result of this conversation? Maybe you felt a little bit uh, you felt like, I really needed to hear about this gift of attention thing, and I'm not doing a very good job of that with someone in my
Mm,
life. Maybe that's where you need to go. Maybe feel a little bit convicted, right? And if that's the case, then that's where you would go first. Like, I'm not going to tell you what the 3 things you ought to do as a result of this are, but I'm going to encourage you to find those for yourself. And if you do that, this will be more than a podcast. This will be a way to help change your life. And that's my hope for you as we do this every week. Mo, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. Such a good time. I enjoyed it
yeah.
very much.
Yeah, Kevin, I want to have you over on our show at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, our podcast, because like I think your leadership, I just think your way of thinking about things would be really interesting. That how you played out how the trends you've seen over the last couple decades. There's our topic right there, and we could talk about your new book that you're revising and updating on how to have distributed leadership in a distributor way. I think our audience would love that. So anyway, let's set that up. I've really enjoyed today.
We'll do that. And everybody, uh, let me tell you this. If you enjoyed this, tell someone to come and listen. And if you enjoyed this and it's your first time here, make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching these, so you can come back next week, because next week we'll be back again with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.